Welcome to this explainer. Today we are going to explore one of the most fascinating, complex, and honestly enduring machines in human history, the Roman Empire at its absolute height. We so often think of Rome just in terms of its dramatic rise or its chaotic fall. But what did it actually look like when the engine was literally firing on all cylinders? How did this massive political and social structure function day to day? Well, let's find out.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Just look at the sheer scale here. By the end of the reign of its very first emperor, Augustus, around 14 CE, Roman territory stretched an astonishing distance, from the Atlantic Ocean in the west all the way over to the Euphrates River in the east. It is a geographical marvel, pulling totally diverse climates, cultures, and resources under one central administration. It's like a giant puzzle of unprecedented political integration.
And the guy pulling the levers of this giant machine? Augustus. This famous boast of his perfectly captures the dramatic transition the empire was going through. He took Rome from this chaotic, war-torn republic that was constantly battling internal strife and ushered in an era of monumental stability. And he wasn't kidding. He meant it literally. He totally transformed the physical infrastructure of the capital, laying the groundwork for a true global superpower.
To figure out how this massive engine actually ran, we're going to break this down into 5 quick chapters. 1. Dawn of the Pax Romana. 2. Trade, taxes, and infrastructure. 3. The legions and citizenship. 4. Architecture, religion, and daily life. And finally, 5. The zenith of the empire.
All right, Chapter 1, Dawn of the Pax Romana, the foundation of stability.
So this whole foundation rests on the Pax Romana, or the Roman peace. Initiated by Augustus, this was a roughly 200-year run of unprecedented peace, prosperity, and stability all across the Mediterranean. Now, this doesn't mean there were zero conflicts on the frontiers, of course, but internally, the core of the empire was incredibly secure. This mind-bogglingly long-lasting peace was the absolute vital prerequisite that allowed trade, infrastructure, and culture to just explode on a global scale.
Moving right along to Chapter 2, Trade, Taxes, and Infrastructure, the circulatory system.
Now, imagine the economy as the circulatory system of this empire. On one hand, you've got these bustling city streets where everyday stuff is made and sold. But the real heavy lifter, that was happening on the water, with their immense maritime shipping network. Having access to a seaport was absolutely crucial, because shipping by sea was significantly less expensive than moving heavy goods by land. The government even compelled these elite ship owners, known as the navicolari, to organize into corporations just to ensure this vital network ran smoothly.
And the reach they had was just unbelievable. Rome operated a global supply chain that pulled in both everyday necessities and extreme luxuries from all over the known world. We're talking massive amounts of grain from Egypt, basically the empire's breadbasket. Then you've got copper from Spain, tin from Britain to make bronze, and through the Indian Ocean network and silk roads, they're importing Chinese and Indian silks, and even furs from the Baltic. It was a highly integrated global market.
Now, what's really interesting is how they managed all that imported food. They have this thing called the annona, a massive state-run grain distribution system for the Roman populace. And this wasn't just them being nice, it was a hardcore political tool. Emperors, starting heavily with Augustus, used this guaranteed food supply to endear themselves to the masses and, prevent riots. It was literally the bread in that famous phrase, bread and circuses, keeping the immense urban population fed and content.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, the legions and citizenship, the muscle of the machine.
Because you can't have all that vast wealth and centralized power without an unstoppable force to protect it, right? And the Roman military? It was a completely different beast by the imperial period. No longer a volunteer force just mustered for a single season, it was a highly professionalized standing army. A soldier would join a legion, which had about 5,000 men, and commit to a grueling 16 to 20-year term, usually deployed way out on the frontiers. Think your daily commute is tough? Try a 2-decade tour in hostile territory. But if they survived, they retired with a set financial payout and sometimes land. It was a career, and it completely transformed the social fabric of the empire.
But here's the catch. Maintaining that massive professional army was unbelievably expensive. So jump to 212 CE, and Emperor Caracalla decides to pass a law expanding Roman citizenship to include all free men within the empire. Now, while that sounds like this great egalitarian triumph on paper, the underlying motive was highly practical and honestly slightly cynical.
Expanding citizenship expanded the tax base. The central government simply needed more cash to pay for those increasingly expensive, far-flung military campaigns.
Let's shift gears a bit. Chapter 4. Architecture, Religion, and Daily Life. The Cultural Glue.
So beyond the military, what actually kept these people together? Well, think about the Colosseum, easily the most recognizable symbol of Rome. Given as a gift to the people by Emperor Vespasian, it was the ultimate tool for social control. We talked about the bread earlier, right? Well, these were the circuses. The Colosseum hosted gladiatorial contests, public executions, wild animal hunts. It was entirely designed to entertain the masses, distract them from social unrest, and constantly remind them of Rome's total military superiority.
But it's kind of wild when you compare the Colosseum to another marvel, the Pantheon. It shows this fascinating duality in Roman culture. On one side, you have the Colosseum, a stark celebration of brutality, violence, and dominance. And right alongside it, you have the Pantheon, an absolute architectural marvel, built with an unreinforced concrete dome and this massive oculus that literally connects the worshiper directly to the divine heavens. It's a society that valued profound religious devotion just as highly as it accepted violence.
And the thing tying all of this together, literally tying it together, was the legendary Roman road system. Sure, these paved highways were initially engineered to move the legions swiftly across vast distances, but they ended up doing so much more than that. They became the main arteries through which Roman daily life, standardized law, religion, and culture spread like wildfire to the furthest, most remote provinces of the empire.
And that brings us to our final chapter, 5, the zenith of the empire.
So when did all these interconnected systems hit their absolute peak? That would be the 2nd century CE, during the era of the great emperors. You've got Trajan in 117 CE pushing the empire to its absolute greatest territorial extent. Then his successor, Hadrian, wisely realizes they can't expand forever, so he consolidates the borders. Think Hadrian's Wall in Brighton, and he really promotes public works. Finally, Marcus Aurelius guides the empire as this amazing Stoic philosopher king. Together they expanded, secured, and culturally enriched the Roman world before it slipped into the crisis of the 3rd century.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how obsessed later Romans were with that peak era. Take the Arch of Constantine, built way later in 315 CE. If you look closely at its decorations, Constantine literally ripped architectural elements and sculptures right off monuments built by Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius, and glued them onto his own arch. It's a deliberate act of historical appropriation. He was trying to legitimize his own rule by physically connecting himself to Rome's golden age.
So the crucial point here is that even though the central political control of the Western Roman Empire ultimately collapsed in 476 CE, the machine itself didn't entirely die. The Romans left behind a massive blueprint that shaped the future. They gave us the Julian calendar, the basis for modern Western legal systems and appeals, architectural marvels like unreinforced concrete, indoor plumbing, aqueducts, and the roots of the Romance languages still spoken by millions and millions of people today.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to ponder today. When you're walking down a paved street, or looking up at a massive sports stadium, or even reading a legal document, how much of our modern world is simply an echo of that incredible Roman engine? It is a true testament to a civilization that, at its peak, forever transformed the way humanity organizes, builds, and lives. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring the history that surrounds us every single day.